An entitled Karen encourages her kid to punch me in the face over and over again, all while I'm trying to do my job as a plumber, claiming that he has every right to attack me in her home and that there is nothing that I can do about it. So I decided to get some petty revenge by quietly packing up my stuff and quitting right there on the spot, leaving this entitled Karen to freak out, all because she paid good money to have me fix her sink. And I've honestly never dealt with anybody so entitled in my life. Here's what happened. To start things out, I'm a plumber, and my job brings me to the insides of a lot of homes. I have many funny stories, but this is really my only negative one. So anyways, this one time I was scheduled to go to this lady's house because she needed her sink fixed. Her husband had left her recently and she didn't know how to fix the problem. And she has called in a couple of times, as her husband would be gone quite frequently and couldn't fix it himself. So I was called into the home, and as I arrived, I was greeted by this lady's child. He yells to his mother and she lets me in and leads me to the sink that isn't working. Now, in most cases, the sink is leaking, but this one wasn't pushing water into the spout, so there was no mess that I could see. Well, right as I was getting started, this entitled Karen's child approaches me as I'm starting to work, and he literally just starts kicking me. Now, for the record, he's definitely not hurting me, but it got really agitating after a little bit, so I tell this kid to stop it. But when I said that, he proceeds to start hitting me in the face. So I went to the entitled Karen to see if she would do anything about it, but boy was I wrong. I went up to her and I said, "Could you possibly tell your son to please stop hitting me while I'm working? He's making it hard to focus." She looked at me and said, "What do you mean? Is he hurting you?" I responded by saying, "No, not really. I'm just trying to focus and it's really annoying." This entitled Karen gives me a look and says to me, "So if he's not hurting you, then what does it matter?" But I said, "Well, I'm trying to focus and it's quite aggravating." This entitled Karen then looks at her kid and says, "Is this true?" And this kid looked at her and said yes. And I was just shocked that he didn't lie to her. The entitled Karen then looks at me and says, "Well, it's my house and our rules are just different than yours." And when she said this, I literally could not believe what she was saying. I said to her, "Are you being serious?" This entitled Karen said, "Yes, I am. My son is allowed to hit you because you are in the premises of my house." And after she said that, she crosses her arms and gives me another look. Well, after hearing just about enough of that, I begin to start packing up my tools and such, and I start walking towards the door to leave. The entitled Karen then looks at me and says, "What are you doing? I pay good money for your services." But I just looked at her and I said, "I'll make sure that you get a refund." And then I got in my car and I drove away. Now, from what I know, this hasn't happened to any other people who came into the house to fix it, as it wasn't brought up to me, nor has anyone left on her ever before. And while I did provide her a refund, I just hope that I never have to deal with someone like this ever again. Wow, I can't imagine just trying to do my job and then have some stupid kid kicking me in the leg in the process. And then when you tell the kid, "Hey, get lost, scram, get away from me," he literally just starts punching you in the face. And then you go to the mom and she's like, "Oh, he's allowed to do that. How dare you correct him?" And it's like, what are you talking about, lady? You can't just allow your stupid kid to punch someone in the face like that. That's so inappropriate and so unprofessional. So you know what? If I was the plumber in this scenario, I would have done the exact same thing. I am not about to put up with that for a single second, and neither should the original poster. Like, that is so uncalled for. So good for you for walking out on that job, because that lady was clearly out of her mind if she thought this was appropriate. And for her to justify this as if this is some kind of like house rule, in my opinion, shows exactly how toxic this entitled Karen truly was. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for calling out a guest who wore white at my friend's wedding, despite the fact that the bride never made a big deal about it or even made mention of it to me and my friend before we confronted them? Because right now, I really feel guilty, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so this situation happened a week ago. I'm a 28-year-old female, and another girl who we will call Mary were invited to my friend's wedding. We were good friends with the bride in college, and we stayed in touch afterwards. The wedding was amazing. However, there was this one moment I had with another guest that kept me feeling guilty even when I was typing this. There was a girl who sat at the bride's family table, and she wore a bright white dress. I thought it was weird considering guests should not be wearing white or off-white colors to a wedding. Mary had some comments saying that it was unacceptable, rude, and inconsiderate because she's never been to a wedding where guests wear white and then casually walk around, chat with people, and participate in activities. And you know what? I agreed with her because it was unfamiliar to me too. I suggested that we bring it up with the bride when we have a chance. However, we couldn't get a hold of her alone for the rest of the night as she was busy going around other tables and doing doing a bunch of activities. But I decided to take matters into my own hands, and I walked up to the girl when she sat down at the table, with Mary coming soon after me. I pointed out that she was being rude for wearing white and for following the bride around while showing off her dress to all the other guests. Mary supported me by agreeing and saying that the bride must feel extremely bothered that her guest was trying to ruin her special day. Well, the girl seemed shocked for a bit and said that she was sorry. She said that she didn't know and that the bride didn't say anything, so she thought it was okay. But I told her that the bride was kind enough to let her stay because if I were the bride, she would have been kicked out right when she walked through the door in that dress. Eventually, Mary said a few more things and then we left. Now, I thought my action was justifiable and I felt kind of proud for sticking up for my friend. For the rest of the night, I sometimes looked over the girl's table and I noticed that she didn't leave her seat until after the wedding was over and that she left with the bride. I contacted the bride a few days after the wedding to thank her for the wedding gifts and for inviting me to her wedding. Then I brought up the girl and I asked if my friend was bothered by her at all. To my surprise, she didn't and even felt happy that the girl did. She clarified that the girl was her niece who flew from another country to attend her wedding and that the dress she was wearing was a gift from my friend herself. The niece even sewed in 2 swans to symbolize my friend and her husband loving each other eternally. So that's why she was showing off the dress to all of the other guests at the wedding. My friend also told me that guests not allowed to wear white at a wedding is never a thing where she came from, so people just do it all the time. Well, at that point, I just felt so guilty and embarrassed after knowing this, because the girl looked extremely down after my confrontation. I thought I did the right thing, but now I feel like a complete jerk. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. Yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest, I really think you are the jerk in this scenario. For starters, this isn't your wedding, and even though you're probably really good friends with the person who did get married, it's just not your place to sit there and be like, wow, how could you wear white at this wedding? What you did is so disrespectful from my friend, I'm sure she just doesn't like it. But it's like, sure, your intentions were probably good, but also, why would you go out of your way to speak on behalf of your friend at her wedding? Like, if anything, you should have definitely gone to her first, regardless of how busy she was, and actually asked her if she had any opinion on that person wearing white at her wedding. Because you don't know the real reason they were wearing white. There could have been any number of explanations that she could have given you, but it sounds like you didn't even give her a chance to explain why she was sitting there wearing what she was. So yes, I do think that you're the jerk in this scenario, because what you and Mary did, in my opinion, was incredibly rude. Am I the jerk for finally snapping at my sister-in-law after she had spent the last decade making fun of my name, all because my name sounds like a girl's name? Because right now she is super offended that I finally said something, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm 32 years old and I've been together with my wife since we were 19, and I met her family after we'd been together for a year. My sister-in-law was the first person that I actually met, and the first time that we did meet, she blurted out that I have a girl's name and then proceeded to laugh about it. For reference, my name is Sky. My wife told her to shut up and stop laughing, and back then it didn't really bother me. I just laughed and I told her that there were plenty of guys around who were named Sky, including my great-grandfather, who I was partially named after. I was named after my great-grandfather who went by Sky his entire life, and after Sky Matterson from the musical Guys and Dolls. So the first time was no big deal. Some people have asked me before if I felt like my name was a girl's name and not a guy's name, and I honestly never minded. My sister-in-law joked a lot about my name and our kid's name when we were expecting our babies. It got a little annoying, but you know, I was able to brush it off, and my wife would cut off her sister and would tell her to leave if she went a little too far, which only happened once back then. We didn't see her a lot for a while, but she got engaged last year and was around more, and she seemed to have calmed down a lot. But now that she's having her own baby, she has really started to test my patience. It started with her husband asking what she thought of the name Sky for their daughter. She joked that they couldn't use the name because she didn't want me to feel more like a girl than I already do. But my wife just told her to grow up, and then we left. The very next time we saw her, they announced that Sky was the name they decided to go with, and I just said that's cool. And then my sister-in-law said that she was surprised that I was okay with sharing my name with a girl. I told her that her daughter wouldn't be the first, and I wasn't insecure in my masculinity, and that I saw no problem with sharing the same name as a girl. The next time we saw them, we stayed out of her way for the rest of that visit, but then she joked that I had finally gotten embarrassed by my name, and that now I was using my middle name because one of my uncles who was always called me by my middle name was visiting, and she heard him call me that. More stuff like that happened, and then on Saturday, we were back at my in-laws' house for my mother-in-law's birthday, and my sister-in-law was joking with some of my mother-in-law's siblings about my name, and she tried to involve me by calling me over to tell her dumb jokes. Well, it finally got to me, and I asked her if she needs to be so annoying. I told her how tiring it is to always hear these dumb jokes, which aren't really jokes like she claims, but it's just insults directed at me. She called me sensitive, and I told her that she's the person who hasn't given up on my name in over a decade. I told her that everybody gets it. She sees Sky as a girl's name, but she is not funny. Well, when I said that, my sister-in-law got mad. My wife told her that she was about to become a mom and that she really needed to listen to us and grow up. And we've told her to stop saying this kind of stuff in the past as well, but she always just says that she's joking. So am I the jerk for finally snapping at her? What should I do? This is classic bullying behavior, and the fact that this went on for a decade, in my opinion, is far too long. This should have stopped like a month in. There's no way that's appropriate. And I can also say personally that I wholeheartedly hate people who act like this. They disguise these awful insults as jokes, and they try to pretend like, oh yeah, I'm just joking around. This is like a mutual exchange of fun times. But it's like, no, it's not. You're just trying to say awful things to me and then justify it by being super toxic. Like, if the other person is not laughing and they're not engaged in this joke in some kind of way, then it's not a joke. It literally is just you bothering them and treating them like crap because you think it's funny. And this isn't an isolated incident. Literally, it's been going on for over a decade. You would think after the first few times that she got shut down, she would finally let it go. But now, as the magnum opus of her stupid bullying, she's now naming her daughter the same name as her brother-in-law, just to try and rub it in his face that you have a girl's name. Like, if this is not evidence that she is a terrible human being, then I just don't know what is, because this is completely unacceptable. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would have snapped and shut her down in the same way as well. My mother-in-law wants me to change the name of my business so that my maiden name is removed and their last name is put in its place. And now, after being pestered about this for so long, I am completely lost on what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 34-year-old female and I'm a cosmetic surgeon, and I opened my practice last year. It's been doing very well, and I'm doing the planning now to open another branch at a neighboring state, which is in my in-laws state. My husband comes from a well-to-do family where his grandfather was very wealthy, whereas my parents were immigrants and had to get their masters here again while already having a PhD from my home country. I barely saw my parents growing up so that they could feed and house us. So I decided that my practice was going to have my mom and dad's last names. My husband is a great guy and his family is very nice, but they value different things and have weird priorities. I wanted a small wedding in the United States because I had another reception in my parents' home country. My mother-in-law offered to pay for a larger wedding so that they can invite more of their friends, but I stuck to the 50-person limit, which is a lot, by the way, as I wanted 30 at the beginning. And I did this because I wanted people my husband and I both knew and loved to be there. I didn't want my mother-in-law's stylist, her business partner, or their family lawyer to attend. She eventually complied and kept meddling occasionally from then on. I never changed my last name, but I would unofficially be referred to by my husband's last name. At work though, I still use my name so that I don't confuse my staff and patients, but also to honor my dad for everything he has done all my life. Now that I'm opening another practice, my mother-in-law wants me to use the family name as the brand. I told her it would create confusion and that people might not know that it was mine. I built a lot of trust, patronage, and recognition using my brand, so I don't want to keep correcting people and to start from the bottom in a sense. It makes perfect sense and is the smart decision business-wise. There's also some legal and extra paperwork to be done if I decided to use a different name. She said she is proud of me and wants to show me off, and also her family name is very famous around here, so I might get more patients. She also joked that she should get some kind of royalty for that as well. For reference, their surname is an old American name that back in the day used to do bad things, namely stuff along the lines of corruption and so much more. So of course I don't want to use that name. I am Southeast Asian, my staff are diverse, and it's something that I'm proud of since we do focus on ethnic and cultural aesthetics instead of the generic white or European aesthetics. I'm walking on eggshells here, and I plan to let my husband deal with her. They always do a family dinner, and I see her maybe once every 2 weeks, and she always brings this up. Recently, 2 of my sister-in-laws have also been pestering me about it as well. So right now, I feel like I'm at such a loss, and at this point, I don't know what to do. This is so easy, it's not even funny. You just need to tell them straight up, no, I'm not changing the name. That would be really dumb. Or even just saying, no, I'm not going to change it. Like, the only reason they want you to change it is so that they can attach their name to it and try to claim some kind of ownership over your success. Like, they are literally just leeches, and they're desperately trying to attach their name to it, all because their grandfather was rich at one point. Like, these people do not sound like good people at all, and they're not trying to like brag about you and show you off. They just want to take away from your success. success. So this is a pretty obvious one, and I think you do know what to do, but I would just tell them straight up, no, I'm not changing the name of my business, because that literally makes no sense. And if they seriously, and I mean actually get offended by that, then they are definitely the ones with a problem, because what they're asking is completely insane. An entitled jerk tries to embarrass another customer at a grocery store, but instead, I step in and shut him down, humiliating him in a way that he will never forget. Here's what happened. So I'm in line at the grocery store just trying to grab some quick lunch. There are a couple of people ahead of me, and the person paying at the register, we'll call them customer number 1, had an issue with one of her items ringing up at a regular price instead of the sale price. So she was waiting along with the cashier for a manager to come down to do an override. Now, it's a busy time at the store because lots of people are there on their lunch breaks, so naturally the manager is taking a while to get there. By now, the line is longer, and a few people leave to go to the other registers, and I just decide to wait because I'm not in a rush. Customer number 1 then turns around and apologizes to everybody for causing the holdup, but most of us just shrug and tell her that it's not her fault, because of course it wasn't. But this older man behind me, we'll call him the jerk, decides to start talking crap. He's saying things like, "What's going on? She doesn't have any money to pay. You shouldn't have come to the store if you can't pay. You should know how much is available on your card before you go shopping." He was basically assuming that she's stuck at the register, all because she couldn't afford her groceries. But seriously, what if that was the case? Times are tough, and you want to sit there and make someone who is struggling feel even worse? So this guy is glancing around, saying these things so that everybody close by can hear him, but not the actual customer, just so he can see who's going to join in with him on this rant. But as you can probably guess, nobody does. But by now, I'm super pissed. So I turn to him and I say, actually, something rang up incorrectly, and she's waiting for it to be adjusted. She's not here because she can't pay for her items. And it's so rude of you to even say something like that. So now everyone is looking at him, including customer number 1. And now he's embarrassed and super mad. He tries to say that isn't what he was saying, even though he had been standing there ranting the entire time. He then tells me, "Mind your business, little girl." But I tell him that if he's such a big man, he should stand by what he said instead of trying to backtrack because he's embarrassed now, and that maybe next time he will think twice before running his mouth and trying to shame people when he doesn't even know what's going on. By now, the manager had come over and fixed the issue. So customer number 1 thanked me for being so kind and then glanced behind me to give this jerk a dirty look. Now I'm paying for my items and he is still running his mouth. But I turn around and I tell him if he doesn't want to be embarrassed, then maybe next time he can mind his own business. I then turn and walk out of the store and I can still hear him yelling insults. But I'm just glad that I got the last laugh because I taught this entitled jerk a lesson that he won't soon forget. Yeah, this is another one of those situations where someone clearly has no patience and they think they can say whatever they want and everybody's just gonna suddenly agree with them. It's also really telling that he would look around and be like, okay, who's with me? This person sucks. Why didn't they have any money ready for the register? Am I right? That is so embarrassing as it is, but also incredibly cruel. So what if they couldn't pay for their groceries? The original poster has it right. That is such a mean thing to say to somebody. So I think it's awesome that the original poster spoke up because this guy took things way too far. Am I the jerk for refusing to sleep on a pull-out couch during vacation, despite the fact that I paid for a bed? Because right now, my brother is very frustrated with me for saying no, and right now, I'm not sure what to do. Here's what happened. So I planned a family trip with my parents and my brother. Before I officially booked the Airbnb that we would all be splitting the price on, I sent each of them the listing, showing how many bedrooms there were and what accommodations we would have. I made sure to double check with my brother, as the house is only 2 bedrooms. One room has 2 full-size beds, and the other is a king-size bed. I asked if he would mind sharing a room with me, as 3 bedrooms in this area were harder to find. He said it was fine because we'd each have our own bed, and told me that I should go ahead and book it. Well, once our parents signed off on it, that's exactly what I did. When we arrived, before we even have our first night's sleep, my brother declares that we should alternate sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room. But I say that I'm not going to do that. If he doesn't want to sleep in the room designated for us, then that's fine. But I'm not sleeping on a pull-out on a vacation when there's 2 beds. I asked why he doesn't want to share a room and why this didn't come up sooner, but he said that we're adults and he was too old to share a room. So I asked again, why didn't you bring this up sooner? But he just said that he thought I would agree to the pull-out situation. I then said that he should have assumed or at least had a conversation with me first. Well, he kept insisting, but I just said no. If he wants to sleep out there for the entire vacation, go for it. But I am not alternating when I paid for a bed. Now, him sleeping on the pull-out led to several conflicts with our parents, as he would get mad if they came into the living room in the morning while he was still sleeping. But as they pointed out, out, it's a living room. This is a public space. If people wanted to hang out in the living room at night, he would start bugging us to go into our rooms so that he can go to sleep as early as 8 o'clock p.m. We're on vacation. We're going to stay up a little later and hang out. I always offered to let him sleep in the extra bed in the room, but he refused unless I promised that I would sleep on the pullout that night, which of course I definitely didn't do. By the end of the trip, he was irritated with all of us over this. My parents and I feel that he's the one who put himself in the situation and that there was an alternative of him sleeping on the couch, but he chose not to do that. However, my brother is insisting that I should have swapped with him despite the fact that I didn't want to do that. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I'm just not sure what to say. No, you're not the jerk at all. Your brother's an idiot and he's clearly super entitled because he thought he could spring this on you out of nowhere and you would just somehow be okay with it. Like, that makes absolutely no sense to me and I really just can't understand his reasoning. So in my opinion, if he has a problem with this scenario, then he should have brought it up well before you booked the Airbnb because his behavior was completely unacceptable. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.